Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Daines.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Heinrich, thank you. Last month, Congress acted to right a wrong and repealed a violation of the multiple use and public engagement principles enshrined in FLPMA. The Biden's BLM land use planning process was weaponized to push radical anti-energy policies in states like Montana, like Wyoming, like North Dakota, and Alaska, despite significant oppositions from the states. Thankfully, Congress acted, and they passed my bill to repeal the anti-coal Miles City Resource Management Plan amendment. I look forward to President Trump signing into law very soon. I want to focus my question on a specific violation of FLPMA in Montana that was prevalent under Biden, and that's the disregard of the views and the input of local counties, elected officials, and specifically the governor of the state. The Miles City RMPA was strongly opposed by those living, working, representing the lands affected. And despite this opposition, Biden's BLM ignored local feedback and they pushed forward with this harmful effort. It was so frustrating to see the disconnect between federal bureaucrats here in Washington who had a very strong agenda and local elected officials on the ground in Montana. And during the official governor's consistency review, after multiple official protests and an appeal from Governor Gianforte, the BLM decided to, quote, reject the governor's recommendations. This is shameful, and we need to ensure the voices of those closest to the land are not ignored or just rejected. My question for Attorney General Brown and Mr. Christensen: what action should Congress take to ensure that local state and local statewide elected officials and those most affected by BLM's actions do not have their voices literally shut out of the planning process?
Thank you, Senator Daines. I appreciate that. And we've seen that as well in our state, where you get to the place where you have the governor's consistency review, and then it is effectively overruled. So I think one of the things that I think this body could do is look at meaningful changes to FLPMA such that there's meaningful involvement that's more than just sort of a pat on the head to the states, because as we mentioned, we need consistency, coordination, and collaboration, but we also need the states to have some sort of meaningful input so that they can effectively be co-sovereigns over these lands where they have jurisdiction. And I think the consistency review is one specific example where I think if there were some maybe a little more teeth to that, where they could be meaningful partners rather than just pro forma partners, that would solve, I think, a lot of the issues we have in the local areas in Utah and in places like Montana.
Thank you. Mr. Christensen?
Senator Daines, it's a great question. I agree with the idea of increasing the teeth, if you will, of consistency review, but really, I speak more of a cultural shift. I mean, we heard earlier about the impact of having not enough planning employees at the BLM. This is a real concern, but one way to fix that lack of employment at the BLM for planning is to utilize state and county resources. So utilize state wildlife agencies to help you with developing your sage-grouse plan instead of working against those plans. So incorporating state and local knowledge meaningfully in the planning process by authorizing those individuals to sit on ID teams, on planning teams, and really utilize the science and data that they provide. And as far as the rejection of letter, I think our governor got a few of the same letters, so we've got some government efficiency there. But it is a problem. It is a problem that after the entire process, a 13-year planning process, the Rock Springs RMP ends with a whimper. Your recommendations are rejected. And it certainly isn't the way that you'd like to see a planning process be working to unite forces, states, local governments, and the federal agencies to really manage these lands for all of America. Thanks.
Thank you. I want to shift gears on to forestry and transmissions. In order for our electric utilities and our rural co-ops in Montana to be able to provide energy, energy in an efficient way, we've got to get the transmission lines in place, crossing a patchwork of private, state, and federal lands. To protect these power lines and communities from devastating wildfires, electric utilities develop and retain authorize vegetation management plans to cut and remove dangerous trees on public lands. However, they cannot protect and empower communities if land management agencies are not responsive or cooperative when utilities are managing the rights-of-way. Recently, the Vigilante Electric Co-op from Dillon, Montana, was slapped with a $5 million fine from the Forest Service because a tree outside of their right-of-way caught on fire. Any attempt from Vigilante to remove the tree would have been illegal, yet they were held liable for the fire. In 2018, Flipman was amended to include a strict liability cap of $500,000 for electric utilities, which expires in 2028. The $5 million Vigilante fire was far beyond the $500,000 limit, and one that's near impossible for a small rural electric co-op to pay. It literally can put them out of business. It's common sense, and no entity should be fined without proven negligence or noncompliance. The status quo is not providing enough certainty. Just last quick question, Mr. Brown. Utah and Montana state legislatures have both recently passed legislation to address these liability problems and the unique burden placed on electricity providers. What still needs to be changed at the federal level to replicate the success we're seeing in our states?
Well, and I think that this is something this body should look at in terms of caps and liabilities. And frankly, I think a lot of what you're talking about in terms of, you mentioned sort of the catch-22. They really need to do something, but they're disempowered from doing it in the first place. And I think having more meaningful involvement with the folks on the ground who recognize the problems involved with the rights-of-way is something that should be addressed. And I think changing that, as Mr. Christensen said, that cultural shift as well, I think could be helpful, but I think this body ought to look at things such as those caps and then how that can be addressed.
Thank you.